Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time of day it is, wherever you are. Welcome to today's grain market blast. God knows how, but it is Wednesday, the 23rd of July. I'm as shocked as everyone else. Before we let Angie give us the rapid roundup of the latest pricing flows and market moving news in agricultural markets, I will get the legals out of the way. Nothing discussed on the Spaces session constitute trade or investment advice, yada, yada, yada. Nothing inferred here is just don't trade on the back of anything you listen to on a Spaces session, basically. Do yourself a
Right.
favour. um, and that goes for me, PIQ, and Angie.
Yeah.
Angie, my love, how are you?
I'm super. It's Wednesday.
Thanks for asking.
I thought it was Thursday for a minute and then you said Wednesday and I'm like, wait, looked at my notes. I'm like, you know what? It is Wednesday. I'll be dipped.
I had to literally take, I don't know if it was evident on the recording, but I literally had to do a brief pause and double check it was Wednesday.
Yeah. It just blurs together anymore. So
Yeah.
we're at the midway point. And yesterday, I think I've been like deal or no deal. Oh, nothing's
Yeah.
happening. And then like last night we're just sitting, Carl and I on the deck, like enjoying the cooler weather before the heat builds in. And I said, oh, well, holy shit, we got a Japan trade deal.
Yeah,
Like
right.
that was
Didn't see that
literally
one coming.
verbatim what happened. And so yeah, we did. We knew we had the Philippines one. So we'll start there because I
Yeah.
feel like the poor Philippines, like they picked the wrong day, right? They should have been at least
Yeah.
one day earlier so we could have been excited about the deal because the
Yeah.
Philippines deal's a good one too. Basically or a good one. We'll use air quotes, right? Good is
Yeah.
relative. Really when it comes down to it, the Philippines didn't really change their tariff rate. It's 19% tariff. It's above, I think April was 17%. The letter was 20%. There really wasn't, much there. Obviously you've got more military cooperation, which is interesting with the, situation with China that we have, and then talk basically like in a lot of the negotiations or in the Philippines deal in specifically, it's said to align kind of with more in the way, or at least this is the opinion out there right now. Like,
Yes.
there's some non-tariff barriers they're going to take down. There's some things that they have cooperation wise that will kind of quote unquote help to limit the influence of China in the region or whatever. You know what I mean? So like, there's some things there that people are like, hey, it's not a bad deal. It does say that they will increase, their agricultural imports or they will buy a certain amount. And that's my struggle, like right now with the Japan trade deal too, kind of to put those together. Like both of them talk about a certain level of agricultural imports that they intend to import. So far, out of the deals that we've seen though, in that regard, like it's at levels that are at or below current imports.
Yeah.
So like with the Japan deal where they're like, we're going to import $8 billion worth of agricultural commodities. Okay, cool. Is that in addition to the 15 that you're already doing or are we going, you know what I mean? So it's kind of
Yeah.
one of those things that, we want to be paying a little bit of attention to the details once we get confirmation from the other side, which with both of them, well, we did get confirmation from Japan. But the Philippines were kind of waiting for some of the details there. But it'll be, at least at the very least, you're seeing clarity, with some of our
Yeah.
larger agricultural trade partners, right?
Yeah. I would
Deal,
go
go ahead.
just
Yes.
regarding regarding the Japanese deal. I think the most important thing that I'm focusing on personally is the carve out for the auto sector,
Yes.
because
Yeah. I was going there.
this is a massive deal for Japan, and more importantly, potentially it has a follow through to a potential carve out in the automobile sector for
For the
Europe, for the
EU.
EU.
Yeah.
Exactly, and that's why we saw a relief rally this morning from your German car names, your broader European car names. And an
Yes.
interesting one is because from what I've read, there's no quota on the number of cars that Japan can send over at this rate. Whereas the trade deal that the UK got, which feels like a lifetime ago, it was
Right.
only this special carve out was only applicable up to a number. What was it? I can't remember, but it's like in the hundreds of thousands of cars.
Yes.
Anything over that was like a full tariff. So it'll be interesting how whether or not Trump rolls this kind of carve out for autos into an EU deal. And on the inverse of that, if you're the EU and whatever deal you end up coming back with from Trump doesn't involve a carve out for the auto sector, we could see we could see some fireworks basically, because
Yeah.
Germany are not going to be happy to see Japan getting a carve out and they won't. So it'd be really interesting to see how this one plays out, in my humble opinion.
No, I agree completely. And that's what kind of just, update bullet points on the trade deal with Japan for those of you that, aren't chronically connected. Like Ryan and I, unfortunately.
Yeah, I
So
think that's not a pun.
for
That's
those who are
definitely
like,
not a
wait,
pun.
what's he talking about? So Japan had, obviously the 25%, rate, put on them. They had the 25%
Yeah,
rate on cars, or at least that's what their letter said. You're going to be 25%. It's going to attach to the auto, industry and
yeah,
some of these other things. And so the deal at this point is now 15% for all of that. And like you said, there's no quota. So the auto industry does feel, like they're winning. To a certain extent, Japan's supposed to be opening its markets completely to U.S. Imports. Also, you're going to see rice imports increase by 75%, which be careful with that. Like that sounds like a big number, right? But I think our rice imports to Japan it's not robust at this
yeah. Am I
point.
am I
Like,
right in thinking as well? And please tell me if I'm wrong here, 'cause I probably am. But from what I read, when we talk about rice imports to Japan from the US, because of the Japanese, well, how much they value rice as a commodity itself in terms of, it's part of their tradition and whatnot. Um, they are very well, sorry, they have a hugely high bar in terms of quality that they'll accept
yes.
for general grains. So the imports that I did read somewhere on Twitter, no doubt, that basically the imports that they get from the US is mainly like rice goods rather than kind of the grain itself being used domestically on that fashion. Is that correct, or have I
I
completely
believe
butchered that?
so. Yes.
You
Yes.
know what I'm trying to
That's,
get to with this, right?
right. Yeah. 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 I am not a rice, person. I'm a rice consumer mostly. But,
I
yeah.
mean, the only rice like that, I'm just a big fan of Uncle Ben's, really.
Right. Same. And so yeah, I think that's kind of what we're looking at is that there have been, but there are certain markets that, and not to get too far into the weeds, but when it comes down to it, there are certain markets around the world. There's certain, industries that have kind of been, left alone from each country to create
Yeah,
a niche, for their producers or whatever. In Japan, that's rice. They don't grow corn. They import a lot of corn. Like they
yeah,
import a lot of soybeans. They import a lot of wheat. You know what I mean? And so this was kind of one of those things where it's almost similar to me, like with Canada and dairy. Like you see Trump's picked certain things that are like, well, that's unfair. And it's kind of like, yeah, but if you actually know the inner workings of all of these things, like there's a reason for it. You know what I mean? Like at face value, is it kind of silly or is it, does it look like it's impeding whatever? Yeah, but is it really, so it's kind of one of those things that if you're not really in the inside of it, it might not be clear in agriculture to a certain extent. And so, yeah, I mean, this is kind of one of those situations where, rice kind of became the thing that they
yeah.
were focused on. It was kind of like almost like he's, anyway, I don't know. There's nothing I can say there. I was going to say catch a popsicle to a woman in a white dress, but it's kind of similar, different. You know what I mean? Like basically where I'm like, you're going to take this. And they're like, no, we don't really need it. And he's like, no, you're going to take it because now it's just become the thing that I need to accomplish. And so he got it,
Yeah.
and I do think, you saw the EU, there was a big, to do, and I'm a poet, didn't know it. But there was a big to do out of Bloomberg and everyone. Like I love it when you see all of a sudden all of the headlines hit your timeline at the same time.
Oh
And that
God,
was
yeah.
the EU response today. European Union's put together their response. Girl, that response has been the same response since 2018. Like the first half of it literally is from 18. The last half of it is something that they created after Liberation Day. Like none of it is new, but it does, there are agricultural imports in there. They would kind of be, less than ideal. They're really the only ones aside from China out there that have threatened, to tariff, commodity imports. Would
Yeah.
that be silly? Yes, especially with their deforestation regulations and some of the things that are taking place in the cash market around the world. Like, it probably doesn't make much sense. But I wouldn't be the least bit surprised with that story circulating with Trump taking his win, with Japan, the Philippines. There's talk now that they have another round of trade talks coming up, next week between, China and the U.S. We know there is another round of trade talks coming up next week between China and the U.S. So the EU has a level of like, yeah, we're gonna fight, but you did see, members of the administration today kind of come out and be like, yo, Japan, look at what Japan did. Japan's good. We
Yeah.
like Japan. You can do what Japan did if you're willing to and if you want to cooperate. If not, we can do this the hard way, I think is kind of
Exactly.
the gist. So we'll see what that means. We'll see how it works out. Germany and France. It's a
Germania?
Simpsons joke. Not a lot of people will get it, but it's a Simpsons. It's kind of like, anyway, it's one of those where you can tell my entire life has either been dominated by like a Simpsons, a South Park, or a Chris Farley movie. That's literally all I have for quotes left still. They're 25 years old at this point. Don't judge me. So we'll be watching that. I think EU too kind of pay attention to, like you're in your butterfly effect sort of, scenario there too. We've got the Russia and Ukraine peace talks today. You can't see my air quotes when I say
Yeah.
that, but that's what they are. And most of it's just going to be, again, negotiation over POW, perhaps, casualties of war, some of these other things. Potentially you could see Russia kind of maybe offer up some changes, but unless they're, really willing to come off some pretty, significant demands that they've had, I doubt it. I don't really see this as being any type of major progress towards peace, which will be interesting, simply because, we did see Trump say 50 days, right? But
Yeah.
kind of similar to what he said with Iran, where he was like, you have 2 weeks, but I might change my mind. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like
right. Thanks.
36 hours later, here we are. I think maybe how Russia approaches these peace talks today could potentially, maybe change how Trump approaches it or whatever, but we'll see. And so that's the part of it where like you have this potential escalation, between Ukraine and Russia, again, even more so. Obviously you've had Poland have to send out their jets, like I think 2 or 3 times over the last 2 weeks because
Yeah.
of how close Russia's gotten to their airspace. Like, do you remember when wheat rallied? You probably don't, but I do. Wheat rallied 35 cents one afternoon because like a balloon fell into Polish territory when the war first
Oh, yeah,
started. Do you remember that? Yeah, now we have
Yeah.
Poland scrambling jets and the world's just like, whatever, it's fine. No
Yeah.
one cares.
Yeah, that was at the very early doors, was it? I think it was was it like a stray? It was like a missile that basically
Yeah,
just clipped into the border
it was like
and it kind of
nothing.
fell. There was no explosions or anything. They just
No.
basically found wreckage of it. And all the market's going, oh my God, NATO's now getting involved. Oh
Yeah,
my
yeah, yeah,
God. Oh
yeah.
my.
I was traveling that day. So like I landed, at the
Naturally.
airport in Iowa. Yeah. And everyone's just like, what's going on? But anyway, so we watching that. I think that all has an influence, but like I said before, I think I said this, hopefully I did. I thought it, not sure if it came out of my mouth. But I wouldn't be the least bit surprised to see Trump kind of pull the rug out from underneath the EU in some way, shape or form today. I wouldn't let it freak you out, but it seems to be the MO, right? Like, oh, you're
Yeah.
not going to cooperate with me? Well, guess what? There's nothing to cooperate with. I just blew it all up. Like that's, and now you're going to beg for what you could have had on Tuesday. Thank you. So we'll see. Obviously, we do have more Fed talk. We saw another round of, Powell, is too late. He needs to step down. Yada, yada, yada. There's a lot of headlines right now about that. We'll see. They meet in a week, the Fed. So it'll be interesting. Powell's press conference is going to be what I want to pay most attention to on that. Maybe, does he get up there
Well,
saying,
especially the questioning, the Q&A
yes,
section.
that's going to be my favorite part. Like, does he Leonardo DiCaprio, like, I'm not effing leaving? Or does he get up there and be like, you know what? Enough of this. I'm out. Like, that would be kind of, either way would be cool. Powell's not like that, so it's probably unlikely to happen, but
I think that's more me and Angie, fingers
right,
crossed, hoping.
That's my imagination. Anyway, we obviously have yield and weather talk, that we'll be paying attention to too. Weather looks very benign. We're going to head into August, with cooler than normal temperatures. Like everyone's just kind of ignoring, the heat this week. And we have like all of this conversation about yield models this and yield models that. I did say yesterday, and this is something I'm just going to reiterate. Like I talked to a lot of farmers. First off, I work with nearly 100 of them from across the country, like directly. But then I also have a lot of agronomists, some of which are farmers too, that are independent agronomists in different areas. I have friends, they may not say the same thing about me, but I call them a friend, across the country. And the conversation that I have with them about yield and yield potential, is very different. Like the ceiling on yield potential in the eyes of an agronomist and or a farmer, seems to be very, very different right now than the conversation that you're having amongst traders, analysts, and things like that with these sort of weather derived, yield models. And so we have a little bit of a battle there. And that'll be something that really isn't going to be solved for another 3 weeks, unfortunately. I was just thinking that today. I'm like, oh, we have 3 more weeks of this. Really until we get the August update, on those numbers. But right now, yeah, there's no heat. There's no real significant, production threat. But I think, again, we have to be really careful. Most folks that I'm seeing now are, using a 181 as their lower end yield range with, 190s as their higher end. So let's, think we should probably pump the brakes maybe on a 16 billion bushel crop forecast right now. But definitely something to be watching.
Well, and this ties in with what we've been saying for ages, right? There's a lot that needs to go right. You only need a couple of things to not even go wrong, but just not as good as people are
Yes.
hoping for. And those numbers start ticking lower.
Yes. And that's what I posted today, and you can have as much fun with it as you want. But I threw some inputs into, just basically said to Grok, like weather conditions, historical, like soil moisture maps, like all of these planting dates, yada, yada, yada. What's your range on corn yield? He said 177 to 181. And so that, I think that fits. And if you were to speak to agronomists out there, that'd probably be where they're sitting right now as well. Like, is it super good in spots? Yes, it's phenomenal. Like there will be records blown out of the water across portions of the Corn Belt. Is it disappointing in others? Also, yes. And so
Just a question on this. So bearing in mind you've pinged this all into Grok, probably thinking this could come up with anything. Were you pleasantly surprised then by how kind of it
I was.
treated the data?
I thought it'd be like it's a 190. Like I really did. You know what I mean? Like I totally thought,
6,000.
yeah, like I thought for sure it would be, and again, the largest grain of salt possible, right? Like
of course.
it's just in line with any other model out there, really. But it does fit. Like I laugh. I joked on Twitter. I said my model, cause every year I kind of have a gut feel. Like it doesn't mean that there scientific data behind my gut feel? No, I don't have a model. I just have like, okay, based on history, based on weather conditions, based on, the things that I'm thinking out there.
So listeners, I've got to tell you, so I actually know what Angie uses. Angie uses a dartboard and
I do. I do. It's 100% accurate. It's better than the South Park model, which is the chicken that you cut the head off.
Yeah. Cut the head off.
Yeah, see, it could be worse. But yeah, so we'll see. There's just a lot of moving pieces. I think a lot of folks, I keep saying this, and this is purely my opinion. So again, grains of salt and all. But I feel like we kind of have this idea in this market that demand is overstated and supply is understated. And so we just have to be careful because that's basically what we're pricing in right now. And so we'll see as time progresses. But unfortunately right now, like if anyone's kind of expecting any sort of exciting catalyst, beyond a trade announcement between like China, and the US, which really won't happen for at least another week, right? We're kind of probably stuck here underneath the pressure of my model says 190, sort of thing. And it's frustrating, but at the same time, it just, kind of in my opinion, reinforces where the low is going to land, once we kind of get there. But at the very least, we're seeing trade deals take place. Looks like we have, 7 days of, additional deals likely to be done. And so we'll see what that looks like, see if that shifts market sentiment at all. But, for now, it is what it is. Here we stay. Like that's what he said in friend messaging. $4 corn forever. I guess that's where we're at. Here we sit. So I think that'll do her for your Wednesday.
Perfect. Well, Angie, thank you so much as always. Couldn't appreciate you anymore if I tried. Listeners, same goes for you. Whatever you're doing today, if you're out in the field, stay safe. If you're trading, keep it tight. We'll see you all tomorrow. Much love.
Have a good one.